Good evening, everybody. And it's 11 at night of the 14th of August. And I know it's an odd time, but then we did attain freedom at midnight. And today, what Kahani Kancheti is going to present to you, and this is a long one, this is going to be a 2-hour show, will be a package of programs about our independence, about ourselves, on freedom, India's freedom. Now, during this next 2 hours, we'll be having conversations, we'll be discussing books, we'll be discussing martyrs, we'll be having songs, patriotic songs, and even dramatic play reading, all are part of our special bouquet, Freedom at Midnight by Kahani Kancheti. So thank you very much for having landed up here at our show. For those who have already landed up and those who have come in, I must tell you that you have to hang on till we finish at 1 tomorrow, that is 15th of August. So the next 2 hours, hang on, stick on, while we carry you through various programs this evening. And before I start, the one big thank you to everybody who has cooperated and come right forward for the asking from all our participants this evening. We just gave them that we want to do this, will you join in? And they of course said, yes, here we are. And they sent in all their packages of sorts. We rehearsed, we spoke, and here is the final show today. Already I can see the numbers are slowly going up, and that's very encouraging. So let me start with our first program today. The first program today is that we are going to discuss a book called Waiting for Swaraj. Now, Waiting for Swaraj has been written by Dr. Aparna Vaidik. She is Indore born, so therefore I have a personal connect with her because that's the city where I lived for some time when I was very young and studied in a school in Indore. So Aparna Vaidik is from Indore, and she then studied at St. Stephen's, Delhi, and at JNU, Jawaharlal Nehru University, also in Delhi, and at the University of Cambridge. She also studied history for a master's degree with a thesis on Lord Curzon's cultural policy. Her PhD, of course, in history is from JNU, Center for Historical Studies. Now, she taught for several years in the University of Delhi and at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., before returning to India to accept a position as the founding faculty member of the history department of Ashoka University. So that is where she is right now. But there's something more to her. The Indian Council of Historical Research has supported her research with grants, as have Georgetown University. Her various books that she has published so far is one is Imperial Andamans, Colonial Encounter and Ireland History, published in 2010, followed by My Son's Inheritance, A Secret History of Blood Justice and Lynchings in India, published by Aleph in 2020, which has also been discussed in our platform on Kahani Kancheti. And today we are going to discuss her current book, Waiting for Swaraj, Inner Lives of Indian Revolutionaries, published by Cambridge University. And there's a forthcoming book coming up in 2022. It's called Revolutionaries on Trial, Sedition, Betrayal, and Martyrdom, also by Aleph, which will be coming up. Aparna Vaidik has also, I must tell you, recently been awarded a grant worth of, well, here is it, 50,000 pounds, which is about 50 lakhs, I suppose, for the project, The Ownership of Public History in India, which is abbreviated, as I find, is called TOPI. Now, that's Aparna Vaidik, and since she's not live with us right now, she couldn't stop me in between of giving her this whole spiel about her, which I think we must know. We are so happy, so proud to have Aparna come and come for our show and discuss her own book, Waiting for Swaraj. The person who will be discussing Aparna's book is Dr. Anirban Bandopadhyay. He is in the faculty of Karnavati University Gandhinagar, and he's a regular columnist for various magazines, including the prestigious Desh Potrika in Bengali. Uh, Anirban, you had given me 20 seconds. I think I have done less than that. So, with Aparna and Anirban, can we go straight into the discussion? So, just give me a minute while I connect you to the discussion on waiting for Swaraj. So, here we go.
Thank you, Sujitha, for the opportunity. And here is Waiting for Revolution, the Waiting for Swaraj, the Inner Lives of Indian Revolutionaries, the new book by Dr. Aparna Vaidik. Welcome, Aparna. What is it about waiting for Swaraj that prompted you to write this book? It's been around for 75 years, isn't it?
Sure. So, Swaraj, the book is about waiting more than it is about Swaraj. And the waiting over here is really refers to what revolutionaries do. So, this book is about revolutionaries who never had a revolution. So the question is, why do they even call themselves revolutionaries? Why should historians call them revolutionaries? Why should people think of them as revolutionaries? So this is really the question that the book explores. How do we understand a revolutionary's ontology? And the answer is often given in terms of, revolutionaries are people who, engage in these spectacular bombings, spectacular assassinations, and their lives are these remarkable individuals with heroic deeds and all that. However, an ordinary revolutionary's life has less to do with these spectacular events, but more to do with waiting, because they wait out the time until the revolution is supposed to come or until Swaraj is supposed to come. So it is on that time of waiting. It is when, they are, and waiting is a time that often most of us associate with, stasis. We associate it with idleness or anxiety or frenzy. And waiting as an idea has been, written about in several different ways. It's very much prominent, like waiting for Godot, and, waiting is, so it's seen as waste of time or whiling away. But actually, I try and talk about how waiting is the most constitutive aspect of their ontology, how it is the most constructive and creative dimension of a revolutionary's life. This is where the real action is, not just when they kill someone or they throw a bomb, but action is here also. Action is in the underground life. So that's what the book is about. And Swaraj is what they wait for. So, just quickly. So, initially I had titled the book Waiting for Revolution. And then I changed it to Waiting for Swaraj. Because the question for me was, what are they really waiting for? Are they waiting for revolution? And the answer that these revolutionaries had was no, they were not waiting for Kranti, they were doing Kranti. Yeah, so waiting was Kranti also. They were engaged in the task of revolution, but what they really were waiting for was Swaraj. So that's the...
This is a book about the time when the revolutionaries weren't really scripting revolution in a conventional sense, or in the sense that Amar Chitrakatha books talk and write about them. I refer to Amar Chitrakatha because I find you frequently referring to Amar Chitrakatha book as what us history students call interlocutors. You are not that often referring to professional historians. You, of course, do all the time. You refer to many of them, but one of your most important interlocutors appeared to be the writers, publishers, and propagators, really, of Amar Chitrakatha books. Who are they, and why are they such an important interlocutor for you in this book in particular? It's a thoroughly academic book.
Yeah. See, we think of revolution as primarily as event, something that happens. An event is an occurrence that is bound by time. So we can actually chop up time or carve out time as pre-event time, the time of the event, and time after the event. So generally, history is studied as event. So you'll study Second World War, you will study Revolt of 1857, you'll study Partition of India or something. So that is the traditional mode of studying history or understanding history, that history is an event, an occurrence is history. Yeah. So, this idea of when you're trying to study their lives in waiting, when you're trying to study their inner lives, then you have to move away from the idea of event as history. However, the dominant view about the revolutionaries is associated with different kinds of events. And this view is popularized or scripted. One of the primary modes in which it got scripted was through the Amar Chitra Katha in the 1970s. So not only are historians playing a role in the way we write about the past and think about the past, but there is a lot of popular literature out there. So you see, Kama McLean's work is there, fantastic writing on the revolutionaries. Now what she has looked at is the print culture. Print culture in the 1920s and 30s that crafts a certain imagination of the revolutionaries. Now, although I'm looking at the revolutionaries and their lives in the 1920s, so the book moves in between that time and the 1970s, when that is the moment in post-independence history when revolutionaries start getting written about and start appearing in the popular culture. And one of the popular culture elements is Amar Chitra Katha, at least in Northern India. But it's interesting, like my book centers around life of Chandrasekhar Azad. Yeah. You don't find Chandrasekhar Azad proliferating in that manner as you see Bhagat Singh.
Bhagat Singh, absolutely.
So one of the things with writing of revolutionaries is the focus on event, and the other focus on Bhagat Singh. So the book is trying to move away from both those ways of looking at the past through the framework of event and through the framework of Bhagat Singh. And in order to move away from that, I use Amar Chitra Katha. That's why Amar Chitra Katha becomes an important interlocutor. That how is it crafting the popular imagination about the revolutionaries? So in the popular imagination, Chandrasekhar Azad will appear. Yeah, in some places, not in all places, but in historiography, he tends to be absent.
Right. Since you have already mentioned, let me just reiterate the point that although it's called Waiting for Swaraj, it's practically an exploration about the life and being, really, of Chandrasekhar Azad. Before I get into a slightly more theoretical question, which can wait, I'd like you to talk a little bit about the early life of Chandrasekhar Azad, because these revolutionaries, as you rightly said, appear to come to the popular domain as fully formed. So there is this Azad as Amir Khan in Rang De Basanti, who's muscular, who's manly, who's fearless, and who's really not afraid of death. But he's a young man, a leader, a born leader, doesn't escape, is ready to die, and so forth. But the book, your second chapter in particular, is really about the making of a young man who debuted as a Gandhian. And the metamorphosis of the Gandhian Azad, really, to the Krantikari Azad, and I advisedly use the word Krantikari and not revolutionary because he did it. And later you'd make a distinction between an Inqilabi and a Krantikari, on which I'll have a question later. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the early life, the colorful life, the upper caste life, the religious life, the laborly life, the Bhairupiya life of Azad? It's a wonderful story, and I'd request the listeners to pay attention here. it is far better and more exciting than a film. Aparna.
Thank you. And here I want to just stop and thank Sujitda and Kahani Konchetti for giving us this platform to talk about Chandrasekhar Azad. So, when I started working on the revolutionaries, there are many of them. Yeah. And I somewhere got lost in the, in the number of people who were out there. But then somehow Chandrasekhar Azad stood apart from all of them. Yeah. Now, I'll tell you first why Chandrasekhar Azad and then a little bit about him. Yeah. Now, Chandrasekhar Azad is one of those unique revolutionaries who had a 10-year-long revolutionary career. Now, revolutionaries generally had very short lives or lasted in the field only for maximum 2 years. And this is the calculation that the revolutionaries had done themselves. This is not a calculation I've done as a historian. The general belief among the revolutionaries was that we will last in the underground only for 2 years before we are caught, hanged, or
sent to an exile and so on. Yeah.
Killed. Yeah. Or sent to Andamans. Now, who are the ones who lasted for very long? The ones who lasted for very long were really people who were ideologues. The ideologues lasted for several years, and ideologues often never threw a bomb or pulled a trigger. Yeah. So see, my phone is going off in the recording. But Chandrasekhar Azad was one of those unique revolutionaries who was in the underground for 10 years. Yeah. And he participated not only in the HSRA, not only in Bhagat Singh's party, Hindustan Socialist Republican Army, but also in HRA, the party from
Republican Army.
Yeah, HRA, from which HSRA had morphed. Yeah, so his life actually provides us with an entry point into a decade-long revolutionary history. That's what makes him unique. Yeah. Another element of his being very unique is that he is not like the other revolutionaries in the sense he is not like the revolutionaries that we read about. Most of the revolutionaries that we read about are college-educated youth. People who come from, petty bourgeoisie background, middle class backgrounds. Many of them are coming from even Rai Bahadur families, very well educated. In fact, in Bengali revolutionaries, you have many people who are very well educated, who come from very well-to-do families. Now, here is a person who is actually not coming from that kind of a background. So his background is very unique. He is coming from the tribal belt. He's an upper caste man coming from a tribal belt in Madhya Pradesh and spends his early life as a laborer on the Bombay dockyard. And then he, lives over there for a while and, keeps wearing the same clothes for days on end. And then there was no way he didn't even have enough money to wash his clothes. So he would just throw away the old clothes and buy the secondhand new, washed clothes and just wear that, like that. So that's how his life went. And then somebody told him, why don't you go to Banaras and study there? They give free food to Brahmin boys. So he sits on a train and travels up to Banaras. And that's how he reaches Banaras, where he gets mobilized into the nationalist movement as a Gandhian. So the story, that is told of sort of the apocryphal story about Azad is him getting, caned on the order of the magistrate because he had gone for a Gandhian picketing in non-cooperation movement. And then after that, he becomes very famous, acquires the nickname Azad. He's nicknamed Azad. And it's after that revolutionaries cast their eye on him. And it takes them to quite a bit of time to pull him into their ambit. So he's a highly unwilling Krantika. Like he's a hard nut to crack. So there is a presumption in historiography that revolutionaries were always revolutionaries. Like, in Hindi, there is a saying, "Poot ke paon palne mein dikhai dete." So there are all these stories about Bhagat Singh sewing the small sticks which will turn into, guns and all that, as if he was born to be a revolutionary or he was always thinking about revolution. Or guns and bombs were always on his mind. No, but that's not true. That's not true, at least of Chandrasekhar Azad. That, but in the 1970s, when Amar Chitra Katha gets written, Amar Chitkatha also presents him as someone who was always given to, sticks and bombs and guns.
He was made of fire, it seems sometimes. I mean, he's a walking, talking ball of fire.
Yeah, so that's the way he's presented.
Yeah.
That's the way he's presented.
Yeah.
And I think that's the kind of imagery that I push back against. That revolutionaries are not prefabricated. There's a journey they make, but the way we write about them, the way historiography has shown them, as if they were always like that. So there is so it's a journey that I talk about. That's why waiting.
Right. So Chandrasekhar Azad is a peculiar character in many, many senses. I mean, to the end of his life, he remains a high caste Brahmin. One of the things he does is to want to get out as some kind of an escape from his village and small town life, because he was looking to get into a larger world. He was bored. And then that story about there simply not being enough hygiene and enough money for him to even take regular baths, and having to discard old clothes, which he buys. He buys old clothes all the time and discard after 7 days of wearing consistently without change. So a very strange kind of Brahmin. Later, of course, you relate a story about his taking to eggs, and more jokes. We'll come to that. But here in moving on, you talk about the transition to socialism and communism of a certain vantage, which is very distinctive, especially for Azad and for a number of other Banaras North Indian revolutionaries, as opposed to Bhagat Singh. Even for Bhagat Singh, it was a somewhat incomplete transition. And you make a careful distinction between them and the communists at two levels. One is in terms of their site of action and actual networks of activity and programs, and at another level in terms of their concrete reading, knowledge, and understanding of literature, of socialism and communism. And many of them appear to be inspired and kept being inspired at the same time from their reading of ancient Indian sages and seers, and Lenin on the other hand, without appearing to make a great deal of distinction. So what kind of a world was this, where there were socialists who were not exactly averse to communists, but even when they are talking and really taking part in conversations about action with communists, they are not really fully coming under the umbrella or influence of Indian communists. And they were quite suspicious, really, skeptic also of Indian communists. One of them said, and you quote, that ye log humko bachcha samajhte the. Especially the debate with regard to the insertion of the word socialist. And one of the things I don't know very well, but it seems to me is your unique discovery that the constitution of Hindustan Socialist Republican Army and that of Hindustan Republican Army is the very same document, except the word socialist. And your engagement with the Marxist historians and their treatment of foregrounding of Bhagat Singh. So take us through that world of socialism, communism, and Krantikarism, if I may use that word. Yeah.
Again, I will go back to the moment where I started conceptualizing this project. Now, what we have to remember is that history writing, when historians write history, we are writing about the past, but we are writing about the past in the present. So our presentist understanding of the past, the questions of the present, impact or influence the kind of questions we ask of the past. Yeah. So in our present, how do we understand politics? We understand it in terms of watertight compartments between left and the right. And that is what was guiding my vision at the time I was conceiving of this project. But as I went on, as I moved, so somewhere at some level, I was writing the genealogy of Indian socialism. Okay, that was my starting point. And that remained for a while. But when I chanced upon these memoirs, it led to a whole lot of confusion. I was like, okay, I am understanding, I am thinking of this as genealogy of socialism, genealogy of the left. But where is the left in them? Where are they actually talking about all this? And that's when my framework began to change. I realized there is some other story over here. This is not a story simply of, this is not the long durée history of Indian socialism. It can be that, it is that, but there is a lot more here. Yeah. And so we can think about 1920s as that moment, or as one of those last moments, or a phase, one of the last phases in Indian history, after which you start seeing the splintering of right and left. That distinction is not that clear in the 1920s. And I say that not just on the basis of the Indian Communist Party or the formation of Hindu Mahasabha or the formation of these revolutionary groups, not just that, but you will see a lot of Congress people, congressmen, were also members of right-leaning.
Yeah.
It was
Malviya, of course. Yeah.
Yes. And
one of the prominent,
Madan Mohan Malviya, Govind Vallabh Pant, and even Motilal Nehru, all three of them supported the revolutionaries. They are known to have given Sachinnath Sanyal and Chandrasekhar Azad regular money. They would turn, Motilal Nehru, until he died, and Kama writes about it, that until he died, he was giving them money, he was giving them support. Many Congress people were doing it. Yeah. So that's one thing to remember, that ideologies were not yet into that watertight compartment. I'll give you one more example, which is very interesting. Now, where does Bhagat Singh learn his communism? Where does he learn about socialism? Yeah. So people will say this answer. But actually, he lived at Ganesh Vidyarthi's press, Pratap Press, for quite some time. Yeah. That's where he got introduced to several people. Now, who is Ganesh Shankar Vidyarthi? He is a Gandhian, but a Gandhian who regularly publishes revolutionary material. Yeah, and he had this dear friend who was part of the Mazdoor Kisan Sabha with him, called Radha Mohan Gokul.
Gokul, yeah.
Yes. Now, Radha Mohan Gokul, who is he? Radha Mohan Gokul is a man who writes pamphlets in Hindi. Communism kya hai, Marxwad kya hai. So he's translating and creating these small gutkas, these small pamphlets for people to read and popularize these ideas. But at the same time, Radha Mohan Gokul is a Paka Arya Samaji and believed in Shuddhi in the early years. Okay, so you see people are shifting, the ideological terrain is shifting at this time. People are moving, people can believe in two different ideologies as we see them today simultaneously at that time. So this is a very different world. And entering it through the revolutionary memoirs allowed me to encounter this world, which was not yet like the world that we live in. And that's where I had to shed my presentist understanding of the past. So am I still answering your question? I think this is what you asked.
No, you certainly are, because that lets me ask a follow-up question, which is to kind of get into the terrain of religion. Since you mentioned Arya Samaj and in Lahore, in Banaras and elsewhere, it also lets me ask a connected question, which is your portrayal of the relationship between, say, someone like Ram Prasad Bismil and Ashfaq Ullah Khan, and the question of secularism coming in. I'd actually like to push you there a bit. Tell us a little bit about the relationship between Bismil and Ashfaq Ullah Khan. Quite unlike those three, idolizing kind of movies which came out in 2007, I think, on Bhagat Singh and others. And also, of course, Rang De Basanti, where these people are young guys, they just make friends. Initially, there's some kind of a skepticism about religious practices, but by and large, they kind of erase or forget and somehow, let's say, supersede their religious divisions. In reality, they don't seem to. And Bismil seemed to be patronizing Ashfaqullah, who seem again to be a bit of a loyal junior of sorts, who sort of ignores or does not try to assert or practice his Islamness or Muslimness that much. He's what you call the good Muslim in the liberal model of sorts, the Mamdani good bad Muslim binary model. So it's a fascinating story because it also anticipates and significantly qualifies the later left portrayal of some of these reflections. And that's a terrific part of the book. And let me also take this opportunity to tell readers that this is probably a book that's not only reasonable, in fact, small, relatively speaking, in length for an academic book, but also something that's written in a language that practically competes with Amar Chitrakatha. And I mean this as a mark of respect in clarity and in accessibility. So please try and get yourself a copy. And thank you once again, Sujita, for letting me do this, and for Kahani Kanchayati for hosting us. But tell us more about Ashfaqullah and Bismil and secularism.
So, Anirban, in order to answer this question, I'll have to go back to where I started answering the last question, which is historians are writing about the past, but they write about the past in the present. So the word, I mean, ask yourself, you're a historian, you know this, you would know this well. Was the word secularism being used in the 1920s in the way, with the same meaning, in the way we used it in 70s and the way we use it now?
I wish it was.
And so we could write an entire genealogy of the changing lives of the word secularism. And there is a lot of commentary out there about the word secularism, but the word doesn't carry the same meaning. And several times in post-colonial India, when Ashfaq and Bismil were written about, they were absorbed within the quote-unquote secularist frame. Now, secularist frame is Hindu-Muslim bhai-bhai. But it doesn't prevent the Hindu bhai from being the older bhai.
Yes.
Okay. So that's how Ashfaq and Bismil's relationship was transacted. Yeah, it was very much in that framework. Very little was asked of Bismil in terms of observing anything Islamic. However, Ashfaq, changed his dress, the way he lived, and became a sort of Jay and Viru story, kind of thing. And who's that guy? In that Sholay movie, who's the guy who sits in the dicky and who actually rides the motorbike? Is it
Viru actually sits on this holder. It's not dicky, it's something else. I forget.
The side
it used to be there in my father's generation.
So
it's no longer there, and Viru is the guy who sits and
and he gets to be Bismil gets to be Jai, but who is in the driving seat? It is Ashfaq. It is Bismil.
Yeah,
and Ashfaq rides the sidecar. So that is really what it is.
Sidecar, that's right.
Yeah. In the secular frame, they still remain bhai, devoted to each other. Yeah. So that is. So I'm just putting that relationship back in the historical frame and trying to analyze it. And another element of secularism is secularism. There's a lot of critique post anti-CNRC protest movement. There has been a lot of critique of the word secular, not from the right wing, but from the Islamic scholars and the Islamic commentators who say that a secular position does not necessarily preclude an Islamophobic position. One could be secular and yet be Islamophobic. And that's what one finds in Bismil's writing, in Bismil's understanding. And this opens me up as a writer, as a historian, to attack by a certain way in which past has been written about, or the way somebody like Bismil has been appropriated. But if you actually read his writings and what Ashfaq has to write, there are elements there, no doubt they are great friends, but you can't turn your face away from the other elements of their relationship, which actually makes it highly unequal. Yeah. So that's what, and the recurrent image is the recurrent invocation of their, friendship, even in the
Right.
protest movements later. So that recurrent invocation is really for that moment, but tells us very little about what happened in history. So it's
that
true for
kind of
Yeah.
brings me to two more tempting questions, but time will not permit me to ask both. So I'll leave out the last but kind of most profound philosophical reflection in the book for another occasion. And that might be a little hard to digest sort of thing for the audience as well. But let me ask a slightly more political question. This distinction that I was earlier talking about, these revolutionaries being socialist in a very rough and ready sort of manner, and certainly not being communist. You walk that out beautifully in the third chapter. And especially around the concept of socialism, around the constitution on the one hand, and the pamphlet literature, really publicity material of the HSRA, you make a clear distinction between the two. Why were they socialists? How were they, in a certain sense, tangentially speaking, more nationalist, quote unquote, and certainly not communists?
Okay. So, this is a distinction that I don't make. It is a distinction they make.
They do.
And
absolutely.
this is the distinction that the communist leaders of the time make. So I saw the private papers of Shaukat Usmani, one of the people implicated in one of the communist leaders implicated in the Meerut conspiracy case. He says this. Ajoy Ghosh, he says this. So it is about bringing that material to the fore and asking, what does this really mean? Why are the communists distinguishing themselves from these folks? And why are these folks distinguishing themselves from the communists? What does socialism actually mean to them? Now, before I answer what it means to them, I will ask, there are so many socialists amongst us academics. I would want to ask, are they Saint-Simonians? Are they following Charles Fourier? Are they Nehruvian? What do these distinctions mean to us also? Very few can actually make these distinctions out for us. How many people can talk about these ideas clearly and cogently? Socialism for us also remains a nebulous, amorphous thing identified with certain elements, right? It was the same for them. And socialism was a new buzzword after the Bolshevik Revolution. Radha Mohan Gokul is writing these pamphlets in Hindi, which these young men are reading. So you could be a Gandhian and be a socialist. You could be Hindu Mahasabha and be a socialist. And you could just be a socialist. Or you could also be a Krantikari and be a socialist. So even Azad was asked, socialism kya hai? So he would respond, socialism, when a time would come that all of us would have khichdi to eat, clothes to wear, and a house to live in. For him, it was that. And many of these young men, as I said, Chandrasekhar is representative of those young men. Like in the sense, he is not representing them, but he is like many others who actually come from a very poor background and become part of the revolutionary circle, who are not coming from a petty bourgeois background or a well-to-do family or a middle-class family. Many of them did not have a college education. So for them, socialism was a good thing.
Yeah.
It will give poor a chance to live better. It will give us better food. They could not make a distinction between Rabindranath Tagore and Marx. Dono ka daadi hai, dono hi acha, warm, fuzzy, old Buddha. So you see that if you ask them, and this is one of the big elements of my thought process while writing the book, how do we even talk about ideology? All these ideas are going back to that central question of how do we think about ideology? Because often we think of ideas as not having any material reality. We think of ideas as having fallen from the sky and all of us start believing in it. And because we are academics and because we do a lot of intellectual work, we believe in ideas and we feel that ideas is what moves the world. I'm not saying it doesn't. But men often are unable to express their ideas, or they do not have what we call an ideology. That kind of coherence and expression is not there. And then often we say, oh, they do not have any ideas. Yeah, they're dumb, or they are, living by the gun, or, what have you. So I think the book seeks to redefine this idea of ideology, where I say ideology lies in praxis. A revolutionary is as revolutionary lives, not just as they write. And that is what Chandrasekhar Azad, Rajguru, many of these young revolutionaries espoused. For them, being a revolutionary was to live like a revolutionary, not just throw a bomb or to assassinate. So I think that's where this whole thing of, but I know you want to ask me about socialism and communism. To them, it was a bit irrelevant at the end of the day, because they had a great deal of respect even for Savarkar.
They did.
They called him Baba. So they would even go to him for counsel. So just for us to hold on to the thought that we are talking about a world where ideologies were not, divided into watertight compartments.
Hardened up as uncrossable boundaries as yet. Absolutely.
And that's why Swaraj was very important. They were all journeymen on this path of Swaraj. Yeah, and that's what makes their appeal. That's how they get co-opted into the nationalist pantheon. 1970s socialism, the word is inserted into our constitution. Where do you find socialists? So you go back into history and start looking for them, and then you anoint somebody. So
I actually
socialism ka.
I actually wanted to kind of both try and sum it up and ask a last question for you to conclude on this note, the note that you keep going back, have gone back a couple of times, even during the last few minutes, is this divide that happens really during the 60s and the 70s, when what you call appropriation of these revolutionaries take place. This appropriation is the handiwork of many stakeholders, the nation state of India being the chief one among them. Amar Chitrakatha is, of course, another, and several other smaller players who later would make movies, publish comics, storybooks for children, and so forth, begin to glorify these revolutionaries into some kind of a timeless, sociologized legends who could do no wrong and who were really an embodiment of everything that was holy, saintly, and noble, and deserving of worship and submission, collective worship and submission in a ritual manner of sorts. Here, it kind of gets me to try and bring us back to this moment of what we call celebration or memorialism of sorts, of certain dates, certain occasions, as though they carry some kind of a timeless essence, holy essence of sorts, which are to be renewed through these annual rituals, such as 26th of August, midnight of the 14th and 15th of August, and how uncritically we slip into these modes of recall, where we happen to recall only independence and never partition. I wonder what really are we looking at here, because I don't have time to ask any question on how you look at the philosophy of these people, the philosophy through which they look at the question of time, being, of being born and reborn, and really of transcending time, as you write about it in a very elegant final chapter. So I'd request every reader to read it for themselves, and trust me, it's very accessible. And I repeat this perhaps at the cost of sounding boring, but do tell us what happens with this, trope of celebration or temporal breaks every year on these occasions. What are we really trying to do, and why not go back to how you spoke about looking at the past just as we look at the present, that it's messy and things are all messed up anyway.
Yeah. So I will just take a minute and talk about 1970s. What happens in the 1970s? Why 1970s? Now, 1970s is an important moment in the post-colonial history of India for a number of reasons. We all know that. Yeah, but just before the inauguration of the 70s, the late 1960s are equally important when Nehru passes away. There is Naxalite movement. Yeah, early 1970s, there is a lot of resistance movement. Railway workers strike. Yeah, Chipko Andolan. So all these green movements, they have started. So the Indian state is now finally seeing civil resistance. Yeah, and having to deal with that. Now you see, the subaltern studies came out of this period of history, where some historians realized that they had something, the morning that they thought would come had not come. So they needed to rethink about the past. They needed to understand it differently, what happened, right? So 1970s, that way, is a very, very sort of potent period in Indian history, yeah, Indian contemporary history. Now, this is the time the revolutionaries start getting written about. People, many researchers, many historians, Chaman Lal, Bipin Chandra, and the older generation of historians start going about all over India, collecting materials on the revolutionaries, yeah, and writing about them and all that. So there is a different push, at the historians level about collecting material and writing about them, but at the level of state, at the popular level, there is an appropriation of the revolutionaries as a way to push against or push back against the domestic violence, the civil resistance. To say that, look at these revolutionaries, they shed their blood for Mother India, and look at you. Look at what you are doing. Yeah. And, there's one very beautiful article by this Professor Harleen Singh. She's an English lit professor, and she's written on this, and a lot of what I'm saying actually comes from her article. Yeah. So that's the moment where, and that's when subaltern studies comes, and they leave the nation on the wayside and start looking at the people. And guess who picks up the nation? The nation becomes something that gets appropriated by certain political parties. Yeah. So because suddenly there is a loss of interest in nation or the nationalist enterprise, and people are getting more focused on the civil society. Yeah. Now, so that is the thing. Now, the annual commemorations. Now, annual commemorations are also changing in their meaning. These are state. This is what a post-colonial state does, or this is what monarchies do. This is what dictatorships also do. So this is something related to, a statism, annual commemoration of a certain kind of a past. But that past keeps changing meaning. And Anirban, you and I are the and many of the listeners maybe are the pre-liberalization generation. So for us, 26th January has a whole different meaning, yeah, than the generation today. So, so these are just state events, state commemorations, commemorative practices that the state imbues it with its own meaning, and then the people, with the times, their meaning also changes. But then nevertheless, if nothing, it allows us all, it's like Thanksgiving, all of us have chutti, we can all gather together, and if there is a family, you can, partake of a meal together. So it allows us to let our hair down and just relax and enjoy the freedom, think about the freedom which is available to us. So the freedoms that are available to us and which are not all.
It gave me an opportunity to talk to a senior after a long time at the end of the day, which I think is freedom enough for most of us. A holiday, we get to enjoy ourselves, get good food, maybe look better, have a good shave and so forth. I'll ask my wife to get me a decent perfume at some point in time and so forth. So thank you so much, Aparna, for your time. I've had great pleasure reading the book. And I have
Thank
a
you.
few other plans with the book, which I'll tell you later on
Sure.
after this talk gets over. And thank you, Kahani Kancheti, for asking me to do this, for inviting Aparna and I to get to talk to your listeners and the audience on this occasion, if not celebrating, then certainly remembering 75 years of the Independence Day of India. Thank you very much, Shojitda and Aparna. I've had a great time.
Thank you, Shudhida and Kahani Konchetti. Thank you.
Well, I think you would also perhaps agree with me that it is worth attending classes between Anirban Bandyopadhyay and Aparna, I think. Absolutely delightful. And that's why when you hear these kind of discourses, you realize why there is a word called panditry in the dictionary. And in Bengali, we use the word pandito. So this is absolute pandito. Uh, Samir Iqbal Khan Sahib, we will forward your question that about the Azadi's journey from Ali Raspur to Allahabad, which I think the historians and they can answer. But thank you very much for joining and staying on with us for the first part of our program, which I think was absolutely enchanting, and it was you just had to sit through. And I'm sure all of us will get onto a copy of Waiting for Swaraj. It'll tell us a lot more of what we just now discussed. So, with that being over, we now move on to our second episode in today's show, celebrating freedom at midnight. We have with us Suparna and Aishwarya Chakravarti. Now, the Chakravarti sisters are actually from Lucknow and they are now settled in Mumbai. Suparna is a vocalist and so is Aishwarya, so both of them sing. Now, Suparna Chakravarti is multi-talented. She's an entrepreneur. She's a filmmaker. She's a vocalist. She's a storyteller. She's a content creator and also healer, director for non-fiction content and founder of Real Talkies. Now, this Talkies is interestingly spelled TALKYS, Motion Pictures, with a history of working for the last 15 years in media and entertainment industry. So that is Suparna, the elder one. And Aishwarya, the younger one, is a product of Symbiosis Institute of Mass Communication, Lovely in Pune, and works for a social media company which is called Social Samosa. So between Suparna and Aishwarya, they do something very interesting other than their real talkies and their job and their work. Between both of them, they actually run something called the Global Village of Indian Music, GVIM. And now, GVIM is a platform to celebrate. This is very interesting. I have been attending their programs to celebrate the rich culture of music in India. So, gharanas, masrios, stories, and all that you ever wanted to know about Indian music is all there in GVIM. It's a challenge. The channel is a quintessential to being like the sound of India. This platform celebrates Indian music with a focus on classical as well as the genre, and more, and while aiming to be the hub of Indian music to become actually the sound of India. So, first having thanked Dr. Apanya Vaidya and Dr. Anirban Bandyopadhyay for that enlightening discussion on Waiting for Swaraj, let us now move on to something musical with the Chakravarti sisters. So I will play for you a medley series of patriotic songs as we are just 5 minutes away from freedom. 5 minutes away for the nation. The tryst of our destiny will be there in another 5 minutes time. So we move on to listening to enjoying this with some music. Sure. Just give me a moment.
लब पे आती है दुआ बन के तमन्ना मेरी, जिंदगी शम्मा की सूरत हो खुदाया मेरी। लब पे आती है दुआ बन के तमन्ना मेरी। है वतन वतन मेरे आबाद रहे तो, है वतन वतन मेरे आबाद रहे तो, मैं जहाँ रहूँ जहाँ में याद रहे तो, मैं जहाँ रहूँ जहाँ में याद रहे तो। है वतन मेरे वतन, ऐ वतन मेरे वतन, तू ही मेरी मंजिल है पहचान तुझी से, तू ही मेरी मंजिल है पहचान तुझी से। पहुँचूं मैं जहाँ भी मेरी बुनियाद रहे तू, पहुँचूं मैं जहाँ भी मेरी बुनियाद रहे तू। है वतन मेरे वतन, है वतन वतन मेरे आबाद रहे तो, मैं जहाँ रहूँ जहाँ में याद रहे तो, मैं जहाँ रहूँ जहाँ में याद रहे तो। है वतन मेरे वतन, तुझ पे कोई गम की आज आने नहीं तो, तुझ पे कोई गम की आज आने नहीं दो। कुर्बान मेरी जान तुझ पे शाद रहे तो, कुर्बान मेरी जान तुझ पे शाद रहे तो। है वतन वतन मेरे आबाद रहे तो, मैं जहाँ रहूँ जहाँ में याद रहे तो, मैं जहाँ रहूँ जहाँ में याद रहे तो। है वतन मेरे वतन, है वतन मेरे वतन, है वतन मेरे वतन।
तेरे दामन से जो आए उन हवाओं को सलाम, तेरे दामन से जो आए उन हवाओं को सलाम। चूम लूं मैं उस जुबां को जिस पे आए तेरा नाम, सबसे प्यारी सुबह तेरी, सबसे रंगी तेरी शाम, तुझ पे दिल कुर्बान। तू ही मेरी आरज़ू, तू ही मेरी आबरू, तू ही मेरी जान। है मेरे प्यारे वतन, है मेरे बिछड़े चमन, तुझ पे कुर्बान। तू ही मेरी आरज़ू, तू ही मेरी आबरू, तू ही मेरी जान। है मेरे प्यारे वतन, है मेरे बिछड़े चमन, तुझ पे दिल कुर्बान। तू ही मेरी जान।
moving on to the strike of midnight, I think that was the best gift that we could have given ourselves. And thank you, Shuparna, for that wonderful piece from Kabuliwala. I think all of you all who are listening will all agree with me that that was the perfect moment to move on to the next independence year, 75th year of our independence. And as we are hearing songs by our two sisters, Aishwarya and Suparna, and from Global Village of Indian Music. And now we are going to listen to two more songs. So we will move on to the next song hereafter. And that's where I'll just bring that song in.
मेरा कर्मा तू मेरा धर्मा तू, तेरा सब कुछ मैं, मेरा सब कुछ तू हो। हो हर करम अपना करेंगे, हर करम अपना करेंगे, ऐ वतन तेरे लिए दिल दिया है जा भी देंगे, ऐ वतन तेरे लिए दिल दिया है जा भी देंगे, ऐ वतन तेरे लिए हर करम अपना करेंगे, ऐ वतन तेरे लिए दिल दिया है जा भी देंगे, ऐ वतन तेरे लिए। तू मेरा कर्मा, तू मेरा धर्मा, तू मेरा अभिमान है, ऐ वतन महबूब मेरे, तुझ पे दिल कुर्बान है, ऐ वतन महबूब मेरे, तुझ पे दिल कुर्बान है। हम जिएंगे और मरेंगे, ऐ वतन तेरे लिए दिल दिया है जा भी देंगे, ऐ वतन तेरे लिए दिल दिया है जा भी देंगे, ऐ वतन तेरे लिए। हम जिएंगे और मरेंगे, ऐ वतन तेरे लिए दिल दिया है जा भी देंगे, ऐ वतन तेरे लिए हर करम अपना करेंगे, हर करम अपना करेंगे, ऐ वतन तेरे लिए दिल दिया है जा भी देंगे, ऐ वतन तेरे लिए, ऐ वतन तेरे लिए, ऐ वतन तेरे लिए।
Mesmerizing. Absolutely amazing, Aishwarya. I think, over the years, I've been listening to your songs, and there is a great amount of maturity that is happening. You must be really working hard and practicing and taking lessons from your sister. Now, Suparna has given us another very special gift, which I'll play for you. She has composed a song on, very appropriately for this program, Freedom at Midnight, on Rag Desh. So let's have this one from Suparna coming up.
मेरा करमा तू मेरा
चाह नहीं मैं सुरबाला के गहनों में गूथा जाऊं, चाह नहीं प्रेमी माला में बध प्यारे को ललचाऊं, चाह नहीं सम्राटों के शब पर है हरे डाला जाऊं, चाह नहीं देवों के सिर पर चढ़ो भाग्य पर इठलाऊं, मुझे तोड़ लेना वनमाली, मुझे तोड़ लेना वनमाली, उस पथ पर देना तुम फेंक, मातृभूमि पर शीश चढ़ाने जिस पथ जाए वीर अनेक, जिस पथ जाए वीर अनेक,
There is a word in Bengali called Hotopak. That means after this, there's nothing much to say. And I think that last number by Suparna, actually, it was emotional to the point of feeling that Mother India was all around us. These two very talented sisters, I think they have done a remarkable job. And I think we all, not just Kahani Kanchiti, but all the listeners today, we have to say a very big thank you to both Suparna and Aishwarya Chakrabarti. You all have always been extremely helpful whenever we have wanted any support from you all, any numbers, whatever you call it. And we hope that you all will continue to support Kahani Kancheti and that global village of Indian music, as you said very rightly and very appropriately today, the sound of India, the sound of music of the Indian music will all be there, and you'll be getting more people joining you over time. So for those lovely numbers and very professionally edited. That is something also that we need to add. Extremely well professionally edited, done, sung, recorded, everything complete in itself. A big thank you from all of us at Kahani Kancherthi, and we look forward to your support as always every time. Now, what do we go from here? The songs being this part of the 4 patriotic songs by the Chakrabarti sister being over, we would now like to move on to a talk show. A talk show, about 10 minutes. We'll have Ahona Chaudhary talking to us about Preeti Lata Wadekar. Now, since we are remembering the martyrs, the freedom fighters, we have discussed Chandrasekhar Azad in Waiting for Swaraj. We have sung these numbers, Goose Flesh, both by Aparna, by Suparna and Aishwarya. And now I think we will have Ahona Chaudhary talking to us about Preeti Lata Wadekar. Now, for Ahona Chaudhary, she is an old Kahani Kancherthi hand. She keeps coming into our shows whenever we ask her to do so. Very happily she does that. And very happily also she has done the Preeti Lata Wadekar show, I can assure that. She comes from a background, everybody is in advertising. One side of the grandfather, maternal grandfather, one of the founders of one of the iconic advertising agencies in India. Parents both in advertising, cousins in advertising. Well, almost everybody in advertising, and therefore she is also in advertising. She is a creative writer working out of Mumbai. Of course, she is from Kolkata and loves the city. And very often I'm told she chases Swiggy, the Calcutta food joint, just to feel at home. Of course, she can't order all that from Mumbai, but traveling down to Swiggy is good enough. So we'll now listen to Ahona Chaudhary talking to us about Preeti Lata Wadekar. Just give me a minute, I'll connect up with.
What did you do when you were 21? That is the question with which I will begin our next segment, which is about an incredibly brave 21-year-old called Preeti Lata Wadekar, who sacrificed her life for India's freedom. If you're not from Bengal, chances are you've never heard of Preeti Lata. That's because her name doesn't appear as often as it should in our history books. It doesn't come up in the stories about inspired Indian revolutionaries that we hear while growing up. And so we thought on India's Independence Day, we can right that wrong and we can take a look at this remarkable life, which though was short, created significant ripples in India's history. Preeti Lata was born in 1911 in Chittagong. She was one of 6 siblings born to parents of very modest means. And ever since she was a child, she was academically very gifted. While in school, she was greatly inspired by the story of Rani Lakshmi Bai. And when she was in college in Dhaka, she joined a group called the Pali Sangh, which was a revolutionary group that provided combat training to young women. A major turning point in her life came when Preeti Lata went and met Master Da Surjo Sen, who was then underground. Now, Surjo Sen, of course, needs no introduction. He was one of the key architects of India's freedom struggle. He was a leader of the violent revolutionary activities centered around Chittagong at that time. When Preeti Lata met Surjo Sen, she expressed a desire to join his young band of revolutionaries. She wanted to join the Indian Republican Army that he was building. The purpose of this army was to liberate the city of Chittagong, which was then a part of the Bengal presidency. They wanted to liberate the city of Chittagong from British rule, and they thought that this act would then inspire nationwide uprisings. Surjo Sen was hesitant at first because it was not common for women to be part of armed revolutionary activities, and he also faced resistance from the young men in his group. But Preeti Lata was persistent. And eventually Shurja Sen set her up to a task. He asked her to go and meet his friend Ramakrishna Biswas, who was sentenced to death, and he was imprisoned in Calcutta's Alipur jail. Now everybody knows it's not easy to meet a death row inmate. But Preeti Lota managed to meet Ramakrishna Biswas as many as 40 times, as has been recorded in a few places. And with this, she managed to convince Shurja Sen that she was up to whatever challenge he had in mind for her to face. She just wanted to contribute to India's freedom struggle. And the young male revolutionaries in Shurja Sen's group also realized that there were certain benefits of recruiting young women like Preeti Lota within their ranks. They could even transport firearms without arousing the suspicions of British officers, who would not check them as often as they would check a young man. And so she was welcomed within the group. Now, even while she carried on these revolutionary activities, she completed her graduation in philosophy from Calcutta's Bethune College. But the British administrators who were a part of Calcutta University withheld her certificate. Her graduation certificate was awarded posthumously as recently as 2012. Now, moving on to the events that would lead to her giving up her life for India's freedom struggle. First came the Chittagong Armory raid. Now, this is one of the most glorious chapters of India's history. A lot of you may be familiar with it already. In April 1930, a young band of revolutionaries led by Shurja Sen destroyed telegraph poles and cut off communication. They unfurled the Indian national flag and proclaimed a revolutionary provincial government. The next day's press carried big news reports of this event, and the British army was quick to respond. Many young revolutionaries died, many were arrested, many were sentenced to death. And the revolutionaries disbanded soon after this event, but it was only temporary. In the year 1931, they planned another attack, and this time it was on the European Club of Pahartali. Now, why did they choose the European Club? It was because on the gates of this club hung a notice that said, "Dogs and Indians not allowed." And this infuriated Preeti Lota and her friends. They planned the attack. They received arms training for the attack. And on 24th September 1932, it was planned that the attack would be launched. Now, the attack was supposed to be helmed by Preeti Lota's friend Kalpana Datta, but she was arrested a week before the attack. And the responsibility of leading the charge fell on Preeti Lota's shoulders. So Preeti Lota and a group of mostly teenage young revolutionaries set the European Club building on fire, and they started shooting from the outside. What they did not know was that there were armed British officers inside the club, and they shot back. And in this crossfire, Preeti Lota sustained bullet wound injuries. She could feel the British officers closing in on her, and she did not want to get arrested, so she took a spot of cyanide and she sacrificed her life. Now, her body was found the next day, and she's said to have dressed up in the garb of a Punjabi man. Even today, something of Preeti Lota's spirit, her sense of right and wrong, lives on. And any time the fabric of this vibrant democracy is under threat, we find a Preeti Lota from somewhere or the other raising her voice, quoting prison sentences, and being willing to give up her present in the hope of a better future. And then we realize that someone like Preeti Lota is much bigger than a national or a regional icon. She's an idea. And so a fitting tribute to her may not be through building statues and naming streets after her. We need to live free, independent lives. And in the face of insurmountable odds, we have to keep our spine straight. So here's to living a fierce, brave life of dignity like Preeti Lota. As Rajesh Khanna says in the movie Anand, Zindagi lambi nahi, badi honi chahiye, and this is as big as life can get. So here's to Preeti Lota Vadedar. May we be a little bit more like her.
Thank you so much, Ahana. Really, every time you are on our show, you do such a wonderful job. And this time it was Preetilata Wadidar. Dharam, I hope you're getting ready. I'll just pick you up any minute now for the next part. And Ahana, a couple of things. One thing I forgot to mention about Ahana is that in the program that we have been having this evening from 11 p.m. of 14th, she is the third JNU product, the other two being Aparna Vaidik and Anirban Bandopadhyay. Ahona Chaudhary is also from JNU. And Ahona, there is a small information that I picked up this morning, which you still probably don't know, about Preetilata Wadidar being the next door neighbor to your grandmother's house in Midnapur. That is something that you can just add on to your little note of Preetilata Wadidar. Another important, I should call it a small little, call it an announcement, if at all. We think we at Kahani Kancheti are in the business of kahanis and storytelling. And like that's what we have been doing all the while, talking about books, films, theater. And we definitely think that there is a great need to acquaint and make the new generation in India, the school children, aware about the freedom fighters. And not all freedom fighters are very well known. Rani Gaindelu, Birsa Munda, there are so many of them about whom not much is written, not much is talked about. Preetilata Wadidar is one such. In pockets, yes, but outside on a pan-Indian, no. So, Kahani Kancheti would be very happy, and if anybody of you all listening today or have friends in the teaching faculty, we would be very happy to provide the content and have small little 10-minute kind of little video shows or even live chats on these Indian freedom fighters for the school children. Call it, this is a kind of a CSR for Kahani Kancheti. We'll be very happy to join in. And in fact, this morning I read that the government is taking some initiative to talk about the lesser known freedom fighters. So as far as we are concerned, we have started with Preetilata Wadidar, and we hope we are going to be able to contribute and do little more in this particular field. Now, what do we have next? What do we have next is Mr. Dharam Arora, who is coming live, by the way. You must have realized some of these have been pre-recorded. Now, Dharam Arora is a thespian, he's a theatre guy, and he's also a teacher. And he's an Arora from Bhawanipur in Kolkata, which therefore makes his Bengali better than mine. That's number one. Number two, he has been extremely active in the Hindi stage in Kolkata, having worked very closely with Usha Ganguly, Himmat Mai, as we call them. Dharam has been in our programs in the past. We had done a program on the Hindi theatre in Kolkata. We had done a program on Gulzar, and Dharam has been around. He has also translated that famous Bengali play Nathoboti or Nathbox from Bengali to Hindi. And he has for a while worked out of Australia, mastering the radio medium. And I kept asking him that, do you get to hear the Kukupura laugh? Because as you know, that's the signature tune of Radio Australia. And for the last 10 years or 12 years, I think he has been settled in Delhi. And he, other than theatre, he teaches in a number of B schools. So, in pure theatrical style with trumpet and flourish, let us invite Dharam Arora to the stage, and he is going to do a dramatized play reading of Sadat Hussain Manto's Toba Tek Singh. Our cup of freedom curating programs literally flow it over. So here you are, Dharam. The stage is all yours. Thank you so much for waiting till 25 minutes past 1, but that's it. We are enjoying freedom. We are celebrating our freedom. Dharam, I will exit. You will enter, as in theatre term, right?
Thank you so much, Sujita. Thank you. Good evening to all the viewers, and thank you whoever is there and listening to us. So thank you for being there, and I would like to thank Kahani Kancheti and Sujita for giving me this opportunity. And before I start, I would like to say that I will make a lot of mistakes. I may make a lot of mistakes because it's a great story, and मुझे माफ करना अगर मुझसे कोई गलती होती है इसमें. So I hope आप लोग मुझे माफ करोगे और एक छोटा सा एफर्ट आप समझ करके इसे एंजॉय करो. and obviously आप अपने feedbacks, give me your feedbacks at how it went. Okay, because this story has made me very emotional. Okay, so I'll start now, and so it's Toba Tek Singh, Sadat Hasan Manto की कहानी। बंटवारे के 2-3 साल बाद पाकिस्तान और हिंदुस्तान की सरकार को ख्याल आया कि कैदियों की तरह पागलों का भी तबादला होना चाहिए, यानी जो मुसलमान पागल हिंदुस्तान के पागल खानों में हैं उन्हें पाकिस्तान पहुंचा दिया जाए, और जो हिंदू और सिख पाकिस्तान के पागल खानों में है उन्हें हिंदुस्तान के हवाले कर दिया जाए। अब मालूम नहीं ये बात सही थी या गलत थी, बहरहाल विद्वानों के फैसले के मुताबिक इधर उधर ऊंची स्तरों की कॉन्फ्रेंसेस हुई और आखिर एक दिन पागलों के तबादले के लिए दिन तय हो गया। अच्छी तरह छानबीन की गई। वो मुसलमान पागल जिनके संबंधी हिंदुस्तान में ही थे वहीं रहने दिए गए, बाकी जो थे उनको सीमा पर रवाना कर दिया गया। यहाँ पाकिस्तान में चूंकि करीब करीब तमाम हिंदू सिख जा चुके थे, इसलिए किसी को रखने रखाने का सवाल पैदा ही नहीं हुआ। जितने हिंदू सिख पागल थे सब पुलिस की हिफाजत में सरहद पर पहुंचा दिए गए। उधर का मालूम नहीं, लेकिन इधर लाहौर के पागल खाने में जब इस तबादले की खबर पहुंची तो बड़ी दिलचस्प बातें होने लगी। एक मुसलमान पागल जो 12 बरस से हर रोज बाकायदा जमींदार पढ़ता था, उससे जब उसके एक दोस्त ने पूछा, मौलवी साहब ये पाकिस्तान क्या होता है, तो उसे बड़ी गौर फिक्र के बाद जवाब दिया, अरे हिंदुस्तान में एक जगह है जहां उस्तरे बनते हैं। ये जवाब सुनकर उसका दोस्त संतुष्ट हो गया। इसी तरह एक और सिख पागल ने एक दूसरे सिख पागल से पूछा, सरदार जी हमें हिंदुस्तान क्यों भेजा जा रहा है, हमें तो वहां की बोली आती ही नहीं। दूसरा मुस्कुराया, मुझे तो हिंदुस्तान की बोली आती है, हिंदुस्तानी बड़े शैतानी हैं और आकड़ आकड़ फिरते हैं। एक मुसलमान पागल ने नहाते नहाते पाकिस्तान जिंदाबाद का नारा इस जोर से बुलंद किया कि फर्श पर फिसलकर गिरा और बेहोश हो गया। कुछ पागल ऐसे भी थे जो पागल नहीं थे। उन्हें उनके रिश्तेदारों ने अफसरों को कुछ पैसे खिला करके पागलखाने में भर्ती करवा दिया था। असल में वो उन्हें फांसी के फंदे से बचाना चाहते थे। ये कुछ कुछ तो समझते थे कि हिंदुस्तान का बंटवारा हुआ है और ये पाकिस्तान क्या है, लेकिन सही वाकयात से ये भी बेखबर थे। अखबारों से कुछ पता तो चलता नहीं था। पहरेदार सिपाही अनपढ़ और मूर्ख थे, उनकी बातचीत से भी कोई नतीजा नहीं पता चलता था। उनको सिर्फ इतना मालूम था कि एक आदमी मोहम्मद अली जिन्ना है, जिसको कायदे आजम कहते हैं। उसने मुसलमानों के लिए एक देश बनाया है जिसका नाम पाकिस्तान है। अब ये कहाँ है, किधर है, कितना बड़ा है, ये इसके बारे में किसी को कुछ भी नहीं पता था। यही वजह है कि पागल खानों में जो पागल जिनका दिमाग पूरी तरह से खराब नहीं हुआ था, वे असमंजस में थे कि वो पाकिस्तान में है या हिंदुस्तान में। अगर हिंदुस्तान में है तो पाकिस्तान कहाँ है, अगर वो पाकिस्तान में है तो ये कैसे हो सकता है कि कुछ अरसा पहले यहां रहते हुए भी तो वे हिंदुस्तान में थे। एक पागल तो पाकिस्तान और पाकिस्तान के चक्कर में कुछ ऐसा गिरफ्तार हुआ कि और ज्यादा पागल हो गया। झाड़ू देते देते एक दिन वो पेड़ पर चढ़ गया और टहनी पर बैठ करके 2 घंटे तक पाकिस्तान और हिंदुस्तान के नाजुक मसलों पर भाषण देने लगा। सिपाहियों ने उसे नीचे उतरो कहा तो वो और ऊपर चढ़ गया। डराया धमकाया तो उसने कहा, मैं ना हिंदुस्तान में रहना चाहता हूं ना पाकिस्तान में, मैं तो इस पेड़ पे ही रहूंगा। खैर, जब उसका दौरा थोड़ा सर्द पड़ा तो धीरे धीरे नीचे उतरा और अपने हिंदू और सिख भाइयों से गले मिलकर के बहुत रोया। एक एमएससी पास रेडियो इंजीनियर था जो मुसलमान था और दूसरे पागलों से बिल्कुल अलग अलग बाग की एक क्यारी पर सारा दिन खामोशी से टहलता रहता था। जिस दिन ये तब्दीली जारी हुई, उसने अपने तमाम कपड़े उतारकर दफादार के हवाले कर दिए और नंग धड़ंग सारे बाग में चलना शुरू कर दिया। एक मोटे मुसलमान पागल ने, जो मुस्लिम लीग का एक जोशीला सदस्य था और दिन में कम से कम 15-16 बार नहाता था, उसने यह आदत बिल्कुल छोड़ दी। उसका नाम मोहम्मद अली था। चुनाचे उसने एक दिन अपने जंगले में ऐलान कर दिया कि वह कायदे आजम मोहम्मद अली जिन्ना है। उसकी देखा देखी एक सिख पागल मास्टर तारा सिंह बन गया। करीब था कि इस जिंगले पर खून खराबा ही हो जाएगा, मगर दोनों को खतरनाक पागल करार देकर अलग अलग बंद कर दिया गया। लाहौर का एक नौजवान वकील था जो मोहब्बत में असफल होकर पागल हो गया था। जब उसने सुना कि अमृतसर हिंदुस्तान में चला गया है तो उसे बहुत दुख हुआ। इसी शहर में उसे एक हिंदू लड़की से मोहब्बत हो गई थी। हाँ, ये उस लड़की ने इसे ठुकरा दिया था, मगर दीवानगी की हालत में भी वो उसको भूल नहीं पाया था। चुनांचे वो उन तमाम मुस्लिम और हिंदू लीडरों को गालियां देता था जिन्होंने मिल मिलाकर हिंदुस्तान के दो टुकड़े कर दिए थे। उसकी महबूबा हिंदुस्तानी बन गई और वो पाकिस्तानी। जब तबादले की बात शुरू हुई तो वकील को कई पागलों ने समझाया कि यार दिल का बुरा ना करे, उसको हिंदुस्तान वापस भेज दिया जाएगा, उस हिंदुस्तान में जहां उसकी महबूबा रहती है। पर वो लाहौर छोड़ना नहीं चाहता था। न जाने उसे ऐसे क्यों लगता था कि अमृतसर में उसकी प्रैक्टिस चलेगी नहीं। यूरोपियन वार्ड में दो एंग्लो इंडियन पागल थे। उनको जब मालूम हुआ कि हिंदुस्तान को आजाद करके अंग्रेज तो चले गए तो उनको बड़ा दुख हुआ। वे छुप छुप कर इस मसले पर गुफ्तगू करते रहते थे कि पागल खाने में यार हमारी हैसियत क्या होगी, यूरोपियन वार्ड रहेगा या उड़ जाएगा, ब्रेकफास्ट मिलेगा या नहीं मिलेगा, क्या उन्हें डबल रोटी के बजाय ये ब्लडी इंडियन चपाती खानी पड़ेगी। एक सिख था जिसका पागल खाने में दाखिल हुए 15 बरस हो चुके थे। हर वक्त उसकी जबान पर एक अजीबोगरीब शब्द सुनने को आते थे। ओपड़ी, गुड़गुड़दी, एक्सती, पेत्याना, विधान दी, विमला दी, बाल, लालटेन। वह न दिन में सोता था न रात में सोता था। पहरेदारों का कहना था कि 15 बरस के अरसे में वो एक लम्हे के लिए भी नहीं सोया था, लेटा भी नहीं था। अलबन किसी दीवार के साथ टेक लगा के रखता था। हर वक्त खड़ा रहने के कारण उसके पांव सूज गए थे, पिंडलियां भी फूल गई थी उसकी। मगर इस जिस्मानी तकलीफ के बावजूद वो लेटकर आराम नहीं करता था। हिंदुस्तान, पाकिस्तान और पागलों के तबादले के बारे में जब कभी पागल खाने में गुफ्तगू होती तो वो गौर से सुनता था। कोई उससे पूछता कि भाई क्या ख्याल है, तो बड़ी संजीदगी से जवाब देता था। ओपड़ी, गुड़गुड़दी, एक्स दी, बेत्याना, विमला दी, बाल ऑफ द पाकिस्तान गवर्नमेंट। लेकिन बाद में ऑफ द पाकिस्तान गवर्नमेंट की जगह ऑफ द टोबा टेक सिंह गवर्नमेंट ने ले ली और उसने दूसरे पागलों से पूछना शुरू किया, टोबा टेक सिंह कहां है, जहां का वो रहने वाला है। लेकिन किसी को मालूम नहीं था कि वो पाकिस्तान में है या हिंदुस्तान में। जो ये बताने की कोशिश करते वो खुद इस उलझाव में गिरफ्तार हो जाते कि सयालकोट पहले हिंदुस्तान में होता था, पर अब सुना है कि पाकिस्तान में है। क्या पता है कि लाहौर जो पाकिस्तान में है कल हिंदुस्तान में चला जाएगा, या सारा हिंदुस्तानी पाकिस्तान बन जाएगा, या पाकिस्तान फिर से हिंदुस्तान बन जाएगा। और ये भी कौन सीने पे हाथ रख के कह सकता था कि हिंदुस्तान और पाकिस्तान दोनों किसी दिन सिरे से गायब ही हो जाएंगे। उस सिख की पागल के केस छिद्र होकर थक से गए थे, पतले से हो गए थे। चूंकि वो बहुत कम नहाता था इसलिए उसकी दाढ़ी और बाल आपस में जम गए थे, जिसके कारण उसकी शक्ल बड़ी भयानक सी हो गई थी। मगर आदमी निरीह सा था। 15 बरसों से उसने किसी से झगड़ा फसाद नहीं किया। पागल खाने के जो पुराने मुलाजिम थे वो उसके बारे में इतना जानते थे कि टोबा टेक सिंह में इसकी कई जमीनें थी। अच्छा खाता पीता जमींदार था कि अचानक एक दिन दिमाग उलट गया। उसके रिश्तेदार उसको मोटी मोटी जंजीरों से बांध कर लाए और पागल खाने में भर्ती करा दिया। महीने में एक बार मुलाकात के लिए ये लोग आते थे और उसकी खैर खैरियत पूछकर चले जाते थे। ये सिलसिला कुछ अरसे तक तो जारी रहा, पर जब पाकिस्तान हिंदुस्तान की गड़बड़ शुरू हुई तो उनका आना बंद हो गया। उसका नाम बिशन सिंह था, मगर सब उसे टोपा टेक सिंह ही कहते थे। उसको यह मालूम नहीं था कि आज दिन कौन सा है, आज महीना कौन सा है, या कितने साल बीत चुके हैं। लेकिन हर महीना जब उसके संबंधी उससे मिलने के लिए आने वाले होते थे तो पता नहीं उसे कैसे अपने आप पता चल जाता था कि वो आने वाले हैं। चुनाचे वो दफादार से कहता, आज मेरी मुलाकात आ रही है। उस दिन वो अच्छी तरह से नहाता, रगड़ रगड़ कर साबुन घिसता, सिर पर तेल लगाता, कंघा करता, अपने कपड़ों जो वो कभी इस्तेमाल नहीं करता था निकलवा के पहनता, यूं सज बनकर मिलने वालों के पास आता। वो उससे कुछ पूछते तो वो खामोश रहता। कभी कभार ओपड़ी गुड़गुड़दी एक्सदी पेत्याना विमला दी बाल ऑफ दी लालटन कह देता। उसकी एक लड़की थी जो हर महीने एक उंगली बढ़ते बढ़ते 15 वर्षों में जवान हो गई। बिशन सिंह उसको पहचानता नहीं था। वह बच्ची थी और अपने बाप को देखकर रोती थी। जब बड़ी हुई तो उसकी आंखों से आंसू बहते थे। पाकिस्तान और हिंदुस्तान का किस्सा शुरू हुआ तो उसने दूसरों पागलों से पूछना शुरू किया, तोबा टेक सिंह कहां है? जब उसे संतोषजनक जवाब नहीं मिलता था तो उसकी कुरेद दिन पर दिन बढ़ती गई। अब मुलाकात भी नहीं आती थी। पहले तो उसे अपने आप पता चल जाता था कि मिलने वाले आ रहे हैं, पर अब जैसे उसके दिल की आवाज ही बंद सी हो गई थी, जो उसे उनके आने की खबर दिया करती थी। उसकी बड़ी ख्वाहिश थी कि वो लोग आए जो उससे अपनी हमदर्दी का इजहार करते थे और उसके लिए फल, मिठाइयां, कपड़े लाते थे। वो अगर उनसे पूछता ना कि तोबा टेक सिंह कहां है, तो यकीनन वो उसे बता देते कि वो पाकिस्तान में है या हिंदुस्तान में, क्योंकि उसका ख्याल था कि वो तोबा टेक सिंह से ही आते हैं जहां उसकी जमीनें हैं। पागल खाने में एक ऐसा पागल भी था जो खुद को खुदा कहता था। उससे जब एक दिन बिशन सिंह ने पूछा, तोबा टेक सिंह पाकिस्तान में है या हिंदुस्तान में, तो उसने अपनी आदत के अनुसार कहका लगाया और कहा न पाकिस्तान में है न हिंदुस्तान में है, इसलिए कि मैंने तो अभी तक हुक्म ही नहीं दिया है। बिशन सिंह ने इस खुदा से कई मर्तबा बड़ी मिन्नत करी कि भाई हुक्म दे दो ताकि झंझट खत्म हो, मगर वो बहुत मसरूफ था, इसलिए कि उसे और बेशुमार हुक्म देने थे। एक दिन तो आकर वो बरस पड़ा और बोला, ऊपर दी गुड़गुड़दी एक्स दी बेध्याना विमला दी बाल ऑफ वाहे गुरु जी दा खालसा वाहे गुरु जी दी फतेह, जो बोले सो निहाल सत श्री अकाल। उसका शायद मतलब यह था कि तुम मुसलमानों के खुदा हो, सिखों के खुदा होते ना तो तुम मेरी जरूर सुनते। तबादले के से कुछ दिन पहले तोबा टेक सिंह का एक मुसलमान दोस्त मुलाकात के लिए आया। पहले वो कभी नहीं आया था। जब बिशन सिंह ने उसे देखा तो एक तरफ हट गया और वापस जाने लगा, मगर सिपाहियों ने उसे रोका। अरे तुमसे मिलने आया, तुम्हारा दोस्त फजलदीन है। बिशन सिंह ने फजलदीन को देखा और कुछ बड़बड़ाने सा लगा। फजलदीन ने आगे बढ़कर उसके कंधे पर हाथ रखा और बोला, अरे मैं बहुत दिन से सोच रहा था तुमसे मिलूं, लेकिन फुर्सत ही नहीं मिली। तुम्हारे सब आदमी खैरियत से चले गए थे। मुझसे जितनी मदद हो सकी मैंने की। तुम्हारी बेटी रूप कौर, वो कुछ कहते कहते रुक गया। बिशन सिंह कुछ याद करने लगा। बेटी रूप कौर, फजलदीन ने रुक रुक कर कहा, हाँ हाँ, वो भी ठीक ठाक है, उनके साथ ही चली गई थी। बिशन सिंह खामोश रहा। फजलदीन ने कहना शुरू किया, उन्होंने मुझे कहा था कि तुम्हारी खैर खैरियत पूछता रहूं। अब मैंने सुना है कि तुम हिंदुस्तान जा रहे हो। भाई बलबीर और भाई विधावा सिंह से मेरा सलाम कहना, और बहन अमृत कौर से भी। भाई बलबीर सिंह से कहना फजलदीन राजी खुशी है। वो भूरी भैंसे जो वो छोड़ गए थे ना, उसमें से एक ने कट्टा दिया है, दूसरी के कट्टे हुई थी, पर वो 6 दिन के होते ही मर गई। और मेरे लायक जो खिदमत हो कहना, मैं हर वक्त तैयार हूं। ये लो, मैं तुम्हारे लिए थोड़े से मरुंडे लाया हूं। बिशन सिंह ने मरुंडे की पोटली लेकर पास खड़े सिपाही को दे दी और फजलदीन से पूछा, तोबा टेक सिंह कहां है? तोबा टेक सिंह? फजलदीन ने बड़े हैरत से पूछा, कहां है? वही है जहां था। बिशन सिंह ने पूछा, पाकिस्तान में या हिंदुस्तान में? हिंदुस्तान में। नहीं नहीं नहीं, पाकिस्तान में। फजलदीन जरा बौखला सा गया। बिशन सिंह वहां से बड़बड़ाता हुआ चला गया। ऊपर दी गुड़गुड़ दी एक्स दी बेध्याना विमला दी बाल ऑफ दी पाकिस्तान एंड हिंदुस्तान ऑफ दी फिटे मुंह। तबादले की तैयारियां पूरी हो चुकी थी। इधर से इधर आने वाले पागलों की सूचियां भी तैयार हो गई थी। तबादले का दिन तय हो गया था। सख्त सर्दियां थी। जब लाहौर के पागल खाने से हिंदू सिख पागलों से भरी लॉरियां के पुलिस रक्षक दस्ते के साथ रवाना हुई, तो उनसे संबंधित अफसर भी साथ में आ गए। बागा के बॉर्डर पर दोनों सुपरिंटेंडेंट एक दूसरे से मिले। आरंभिक कार्रवाई खत्म होने के बाद तबादला शुरू हो गया, जो रात भर जारी रहा। पागलियों को नौकरियों से निकालना और उनको दूसरे अफसरों के हवाले करना बड़ा कठिन काम था। कई तो बाहर ही नहीं निकलते थे। जो निकलने पर रजामंद होते थे उनको संभालना मुश्किल हो जाता था, क्योंकि वो इधर उधर भाग उठते थे। जो नंगे थे उनको कपड़े पहनाए जाते तो वे फाड़कर अपने तन से जुदा कर देते थे। कोई गालियां बक रहा है, कोई गा रहा है, आपस में लड़ झगड़ रहे हैं, रो रहे हैं, बक रहे हैं, कान पड़ी आवाज सुनाई नहीं देती थी। पागल औरतों का शोरगुल अलग ही था, और सर्दी इतने कड़ाके की थी कि दांत से दांत बज रहे थे। पागलों की बहुमत इस तबादले के हक में नहीं थी, इसलिए कि उनकी समझ में आता था कि उन्हें अपनी जगह से उखाड़ कर फेंका जा रहा है। चंद जो कुछ सोच रहे थे, पाकिस्तान जिंदाबाद, पाकिस्तान मुर्दाबाद के नारे लगा रहे थे। 2-3 मर्तबा फसाद होते होते बचा, क्योंकि कुछ मुसलमान और सिखों को ये नारे सुन करके वो तैश में आ गए। जब बिशन सिंह की बारी आई और वाघा के संबंधित अफसर उसका नाम रजिस्टर में दर्ज करने लगा, तो उसने पूछा, टोबा टेक सिंह कहां है, पाकिस्तान में या हिंदुस्तान में? अफसर हंसा। पाकिस्तान में। यह सुनकर बिशन सिंह उछल कर एक तरफ हट गया और दौड़कर अपने बाकी साथियों के पास पहुंच गया। पाकिस्तान सिपाहियों ने उसे पकड़ लिया और दूसरी तरफ ले जाने लगे, मगर उसने चलने से इनकार कर दिया और जोर जोर से चिल्लाने लगा, टोबा टेक सिंह कहां है? ओपर दी गुड़ दी एग्स दी बेदयाना विमला दी बाल ऑफ द टोबा टेक सिंह एंड पाकिस्तान। उसे बहुत समझाया गया कि देखो, अब टोबा टेक सिंह पाकिस्तान चला गया है, अगर नहीं गया ना तो चलो हम फौरन उसे वहां भेज देंगे, मगर वो ना माना। जब उसको जबरदस्ती दूसरी तरफ ले जाने की कोशिश की गई तो वो बीच में एक जगह में इस अंदाज में अपनी सूजी हुई टांगों पर खड़ा हो गया जैसे अब उसे वहां से कोई ताकत नहीं हटा सकती। आदमी चूंकि निरीह था, उससे जबरदस्ती नहीं की गई, उसको वहीं खड़ा रहने दिया गया। बाकी काम चलता रहा। सूरज निकलने से पहले निश्चेष्ट और अचल बिशन सिंह के हलक से आसमान को फाड़ देने वाली एक चीख निकली। इधर उधर से कई अफसर दौड़े आए और देखा कि वो आदमी जो 15 बरस तक दिन रात अपनी टांग पर खड़ा रहा, औंधे मुंह लेटा था। उधर कांटेदार तारों के पीछे हिंदुस्तान था, इधर वैसे ही तारों के पीछे पाकिस्तान। बीच में जमीन के इस टुकड़े पर, जिसका कोई नाम नहीं था, टोबा टेक सिंह पड़ा था। थैंक यू। साई। Thank you, everyone.
Relax, Dharam. Let us also take a breath. You also take a breath. Have a glass of water. Oh,
Yeah, I will.
believe me. Yeah. Wow. In fact, there is one couple of comments which have come while you were reading is going to make you feel good, feel nice. It is making us feel good and nice. So it has been really so moving. The end was so moving. We also had to pause. It was really great reading. And Dharam, I'll tell you something personally, not just tell you that thank you very much for having come for our show. But this is the finest reading of Toba Tek Singh that I have heard in my life. Believe me.
Thank you.
We've never heard anything like this better. And I think I've got there is Jyoti Mehra also, I think, echoing what I'm saying. Wonderful reading. Sheila Sanyal also has. We have never heard anything better than this. Very seriously. What a
Thank you,
wonderful
sir. Thank
reading. And no, Sir Dharam, this has come from within. This has come from within. And Sabir Iqbal Saab, he says that you have actually made us speechless, which is why I told you, wait, let us get our breath back. What partition we have done, and what price of the freedom. I think it has all been encapsulated by Manto and Toba Tek Singh. So
Correct.
that's what it has been like. Now, So what we will have to do is that thank you so much, Dharam, for taking.
Thank you so
can
much.
see, you have taken so much trouble and continue
No,
to
no,
be a
no
part
trouble.
of this Kahani Kancheti team.
No, it is a pleasure. I think I got this opportunity, and on such an auspicious day, 15th August. Actually, we have in my family, I've seen partition, and I mean, have heard a lot of stories, and when you read, you actually live. When you read a story, you read a story. It does, but when you read the story for 2 weeks and you try to emote, and I thought that I will read, and when I'm doing the play, I will not get so emotional. But the end is so, the way is written. So I think, thank you to everyone who has patience and, stayed
Not
up so
just
late.
written. The thing what you have done, Dharam, you have actually done so much justice to Manto. You have actually done that great justice to Manto by having read it
Thank
out like that. Amazing. I mean, as I said, we have heard celebrities read Toba Tek Singh. We have read this, one act plays. But this, I think, and this will be up on YouTube. And I must tell all my viewers, those of you who are still here with us, and this is now 1:45 for the 15th of August. All this is going to be up on YouTube. Whenever you feel like wanting to listen to this show by Dharam, please go to our YouTube channel. This will be up there. So, Dharam, thank you very much for
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And
To
really,
everybody.
we are all,
No, thank you.
We are all completely moved. It was a pleasure listening to Dharam. More,
Yes.
you really excelled. So that's what is coming. So now we will move on to our last episode in this package that we have bought. We called you, this is a bouquet of our freedom at midnight from Kahani Kancheti. And now let's come to the last part of it. The last part of it is very simple. Let me, Dharam, I will put you on backstage for
Yeah.
and
Yes,
take your
yes.
time. And thank you very much, Dharam. We will catch up soon.
Thank you.
We have
No,
lot
thank you
more
today,
things to
because
do.
I think we are doing this this is in a small way, we are,
country.
country. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. We are doing this thing for our country, so there's no thank you to anybody.
No, thank you.
Absolutely
No, thank
right. Okay, thanks. Okay, and thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming in as well. Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So now we come to the last part, and I'm so glad some of you all are still here with us, and it's 1:48 in the morning. But that actually goes, as Dharam says, it's love for the country. So let us continue the love a little more. And what I have with me now is really something I'm sure all of you would love to have that. Listen to this. We have a song. But put it simply, the song is Humko Man Ki Shakti Dena. Now, this song has been sung by Usha Uthup, along with the ladies of Calcutta, the ladies of Kolkata, and Rotary Club of Calcutta, Aviana. So they have all come together. And by the way, talking about Nari Shakti, which is what you will be seeing just now in a few moments, we have had today Aparna, that was Nari Shakti. We have had Suparna and Aishwarya, Nari Shakti. We have had Ahona Chaudhary, Nari Shakti. And now we have countless of them, the Nari Shaktis, who are really shaping this new country. Shaping this old country, old tradition, but in a new way. They're shaping it, the contemporary nation. Who have been ignored for a long time are to be taken very seriously now. And this song will tell you how seriously, very honestly. A couple of things about this particular number coming up and the team. Some of the singers over here, including Usha Uthup and Rita Bhimani. These are people I have known since I joined advertising way back in 1976. Usha Di has actually cut a few, recorded and scored and sung a few jingles for some brand that I have worked, like Bata's North Star and Dunlop Roadster 99 and some many others. Of course, so there is Rita Di, there is Usha Di, and there are also some of my very close family who are a part of the singers whom I have known for 50 years. Some fellow colleagues, fellow travelers in the business of advertising are also here as a part of the team. So without much ado, let's close this program, as I said, with the icing on the cake. And I'm sure you all have loved this package that we have produced so far on Freedom at Midnight. Please write your comments after the song is over. Please listen to this song. And like we all wept a little, please weep again once more. So we go straight to the song. Just give me a moment till I connect.
Hi everybody, Namaskar, Namaskaram, Sat Sri Akal, Assalamu Alaikum. We know it is the need of the hour, these unprecedented trying times for the whole world. And so we sing and pray for strength and peace, not just for India, but for the whole world. We are sure unity of mind and soul and music will surely heal the world. Let's all heal the world together.
हमको मन की शक्ति देना, मन विजय करे,
दूसरों की जैसे पहले खुद को जय करे। हमको मन की शक्ति देना, मन विजय करे, दूसरों के जैसे पहले खुद को जय करे।
हमको मन की शक्ति देना, भेदभाव अपने दिल से साफ कर सके,
भेदभाव अपने दिल से साफ कर सके,
तो से भूल हो तो माफ कर सके।
दोस्तों से भूल हो तो माफ कर सके,
झूठ से बचे रहे, सच का दम भरे।
झूठ से बचे रहे, सच का दम भरे,
दूसरों की जैसे पहले खुद को जय करे।
हमको मन की शक्ति देना, मन विजय करे, दूसरों की जैसे पहले खुद को जय करे। हमको मन की शक्ति देना, मुश्किलें पड़े तो हम पे इतना कर्म कर,
मुश्किलें पड़े तो हम पे इतना कर्म कर, साथ दे तो धर्म का, चले तो धर्म पर,
साथ दे तो धर्म का, चले तो धर्म पर।
Well, how would you like to respond? Seriously, I think we had done the right thing by keeping that song right till the end. And it was an amazing recording. It was an amazing, mind you, this recording has been done during the pandemic. It's been done during the pandemic, which means that this has been, everybody has sung separately. So Ushadi has led the whole process. And today we have this, all of them individually sung, recorded, put together. What a great effort. And this is the great effort that I think that speaks about what we in this country as Indians, we now need to do. The great effort of putting things together. And that's a wonderful way to salute the flag. It's a wonderful way to salute the people of India. And that's what exactly the ladies of Calcutta, Rotary Club Abhiyana, Rotary Club of Calcutta Abhiyana, who have kindly given me the permission to use this particular piece, have done. And well, Archana, you are saying it's a beautiful song. It's an amazing experience. I would like to put it that way. Absolutely mesmerizing. Very true, Dharam. That's the word I think I was looking for. And so with that, we are exactly just a minute and a half away from 1 o'clock. And we said that we are going to do this a 2-hour program starting at 11 p.m. on 14th night and ending on 1 a.m. on 15th morning. And we have done that. So a big thank you to everybody for coming and joining this. And those of you all who have really stayed on till the end, a bigger thank you. But our event will be up by tomorrow by 11 o'clock on YouTube. You can go to our Facebook page. We'll give you the link over there. So you can click the link and listen to the entire program. Some of the events will be separately capsulized and also put up on YouTube, which can be forwarded, carried forward. So all that we can say on behalf of Kahani Kancheti, first of all, our big thank you goes to all the participants who came in today. Aparna, Anirban, Suparna, Aishwarya, Ahona, Dharam, and the ladies of Kolkata Rotary Club Abhiyana. So with that, we close today. It is exactly bang on time. Enjoy the freedom. Jai Hind.